Hello there. I first met today's guest over 20 years ago when we studied at the same College of Arts. For a long time, I was an admirer of their work and therefore thrilled when we first got the chance to collaborate on projects together. Across theatre, television, film, and live experiences, our guest brings iconic characters to life through building, performance, and puppetry. From the Westend to Galaxies Far Far Away, his credits are too numerous to mention, having established a reputation as a multi-hyphenate creative who understands how to turn inanimate materials into living, breathing creatures. But these are the headlines. And as always, it's the bits in between that we're going to dive into today. To me, he's a friend, first and foremost, a business partner, and somebody I respect greatly and love collaborating with. This episode, we're getting notes from Chris Barlow. Let's do it. Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm thrilled as I'm kind of getting into my groove and hitting my stride a little bit to welcome you to Getting Notes From.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I hope I'm not a crashing disappointment.
I know already that you won't be, but I do know that we've been working very hard.
We have.
For the past month or two, but in particular, you've been doing some long stints in Can you say what you've been doing or where you've been doing it, or even allude to it loosely?
I think I can say, I think I'm allowed to say I worked on the new J.J. Abrams film. Am I allowed to say? There's so many contracts,
but
and a galaxy far away,
far away from here.
Yeah.
Say that
deep in space for a while with Ryan Gosling's and marched myself back in the closet to lands where there are lion gods.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about your adventures in film and on the big screen because it's something I find fascinating and I love your insights into that world. So we'll definitely pluck at that thread later on. But we always kick off with common ground and establish how we know each other, which for us is... Because we're common. It's Bretton Hall.
Yeah. In the introduction, when you said 20 years ago, it made me feel...
Yeah, well, I'm
deeply, painfully old.
Let me tell you this, I'm rounding down.
I know, that's the horror of it all. But yeah, Bretton Hall...
So for listeners or viewers who don't know, Bretton Hall was a College of Arts in West Yorkshire, now where the Yorkshire Sculpture Park resides. And it was kind of...
the Rada of the North.
It had a reputation for contemporary theatre, I think, and dance and being a little bit bolder. But also, it was set in kind of 400 acres of raked landscape in the style of Capability Brown, a mansion house at the centre of it with these follies hidden away and overgrown in the landscape and the woodlands. And it was kind of a Hogwarts for the arts, really.
Weirdly, yeah, because it's that, big building on a hill surrounded by a lake and a forest. And artwork.
And a microcosm, really.
And naked students.
And naked students. A microcosm in that there wasn't anything else. There were teacher training courses taught there in and around the arts.
Yeah.
But then all the courses there were creative, really.
It was everything from sculpture, fine arts, scenic design, opera, popular music, contemporary dance, traditional dance, acting, dramaturgy, singing, which is also opera, funnily enough.
We were there. So I was in the year below you because I'd taken a year out before I studied, but it was a transitional time when we were there because it had hit hard times. It had been acquired by the University of Leeds, and it was kind of becoming a bit turbulent, I think, and it was the end of an era.
Big mess.
It was a hot mess. But anyway, that's where we first became aware of each other, as you do in these environments, and then, as I mentioned, years later, we began collaborating together. But we'll come onto that. Another bit of common ground I like is that both of our fathers were firemen.
Correct. Yeah. My dad was a fireman in the South, Southampton and Hampshire areas. Red Hill is a name that rings a bell for some reason. And then he became a fire training officer before he retired and returned to being a mechanic.
How did you feel about that as a kid? Were you kind of proud of him, or did it have any interest or excitement around it?
Yeah, I think so. There was like, I have lots of memories of being sat in fire engines when I was very young, and like getting to go in like the smoke tower, they do the training, which was really cool. And I remember sort of sitting in, I guess, like a changing room, hangar room, where all the protective gear is hung and all these kind of smoke stained sort of helmets and big sort of flame, I guess, heat retardant kind of jackets with the stripes and stuff on, which, various bits of memories about that.
Similarly, like I remember, regularly visiting.
None
fire
of them
stations.
look like the calendars I've seen now.
Can I just say, I thought you got through all of that, including being sat in fire engines with firemen, so well, avoiding any innuendo or
innuendo.
And there we are. This is going to be a big edit, guys. So, any other common ground? Well, this year, after years of collaborating together, we launched a business together, which we'll also come on to talk to later on. But perhaps what I think is going to be interesting about yourself, and perhaps similar to when we spoke to James MacGyver recently, the costumier that we both know, is you're a largely self-taught creative, and a lot of your craft you've had to learn yourself outside of education routes or academia. So I think that's going to be a useful thing to talk to you about throughout the interview, how you've kind of enriched your knowledge and continue to hone and refine your craft and abilities. But maybe just jump back pre-Breton, young Chris, what had life been like? When did you start to discover that you were creative and interested, I guess, in the theatre? Must have been your first inroad?
Yeah, so I was always a creative, even from the youngest of ages, always drawing and making and I'm just obsessed with it in a sense. But that would include everything from sort of cooking and making cakes to mud pies to drawing and everything, gluing, sticking, all of that. And I also had a love of the theatre, which had sort of been introduced to me, I guess, probably through pantomime. I think we would go and see the pantomime in Southampton at the Mayflower as a sort of a Christmas thing. And then later, I think we went to the one in Basingstoke. So I had those interests. It wasn't like I came from an arty family necessarily. My grandparents were sort of involved with an amateur drama group a bit. And so there was some exposure to that there. And my grandfather painted a bit, but I never really touched on that with him. My childhood was quite broken up and a bit fractured as I sort of lived with my mum, and then she sort of died when I was 12, and then I moved in with my dad. So I was sort of shuffled around quite a bit. But the thing that was always consistent with me was that I was creative. And actually, when going through that period of my life, my creative kind of hobbies and desires and enjoyments became intrinsic to surviving. A
safe place, somewhere, a place that you kind of went
sense,
to.
Yeah, and just a way of a space where I can process.
Because we're not going to delve into it in detail, obviously, but just for a timeline of your younger years then. So how old were you when your parents separated?
Young, like 3, 4.
Okay, so they separate 3 or 4. Then you've lived with your mum up until she died, and then gone to live with your dad. Yeah. So you were what age then?
12.
So that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's such colossal events.
And we had just had, so the whole kind of, that process was quite complex because my mum had met a man who became my stepdad, and we moved from Woolston to Church Crookham. And then, so I just changed schools, and then we had to move again, and I had to change schools again. And this was while she was dying. So it was literally like 2 really intense years of relentless upheaval and moving schools and starting again in schools while spending every night after school in the hospitals. And then she died, and then the way that all fell apart, because I guess people try and protect children from it. Like, I knew something was really bad, but we went on a little holiday with my dad down to Muddyford Sandbanks. And when we had done this previously, we would then go back home to mum. And then for some reason we didn't. And we were just sort of hanging around at my dad's new place with his kind of partner who he hadn't been with hugely, and he had just moved in with. And it was just a bit like, why aren't we going home?
Yeah.
And it's because my mum had been moved into the final stages home, and and she was basically preparing to die, and we never went back home. And there was a bedroom that I was supposed to have at my mum's house that I never ever slept in ever.
Yeah.
Because I never made it there really.
Yeah. And
then I had to move schools again.
Man, which even that before parent separation, losing your mum, just changing schools is turbulent enough, particularly when you get into those kind of teen years.
1, 2, so it's like 4 schools and 1, 2, 3, 4 schools, 4 houses in
such a lot
in like 2 years, and losing my mum. And so those elements of kind of drawing arty stuff became really important. It was the only thing I kind of had some control in, I guess.
Yeah. And what about this is a leading question because I kind of know the answer because we talk about it often, but what about finding your people at that age?
I didn't find my people at that age. I was the really fat kid that had braces and didn't start at any of the schools in that area. So I was jumping into a new school with people I'd never gone to previous schools with in an area I didn't know. And it just wasn't the place for me. I just didn't, it was a very academic school. They did things like school plays and they offered art stuff, but it was a school that really wanted to achieve in science, maths, or sports. They loved their sports. And I just didn't find joy there. But then I was also a 12-year-old that just gone through a hell of a lot and grieving. Yeah. So I was completely lost. I made a couple of friends, and I had a close friend who I used to help do her like paper rounds with every day and stuff, and did my paper round in the morning. And but my escape from that started to become joining every kind of drama group and youth drama group and drama club. And I could, so I did every school play and every school performance thing I could. And then I would sort of finish school, and then I would go to Gems or Rails, and it sort of would start to alternate, like Gems on a Monday, Rails on a Tuesday, Gems on a Wednesday, Rails on a Thursday. So we did this, and flooded my time. And then I did center stage, and then I sort of did little speech and drama.
And this is
classes.
You performing at this stage?
Yeah, but I was also kind of trying to get my interest in making stuff involved as well. So I was sort of trying to volunteer to help make props or paint sets, and like Rails is really cool because Rails is an amateur drama group that exists now still, and they own the Plaza Theatre in Romsey. And what was quite interesting about that, having their own space meant they could do like a kind of a performance schedule that would rotate. So all year they had plays going, and they would build their own sets. They had a warehouse at the back. And so, if you're with someone willing to make things and paint things as a hobby, they were like, come on in. And that was really cool. So you could go in and throw paint around. You can make stuff for them, and as well as sort of audition for their plays and take part.
So at this stage, when you say making things, I guess we're talking props, scenery.
Yeah. And, puppets and...
Oh, really? So even at that early on,
well,
puppets?
Puppets was something I loved anyway from my childhood. From influences from various television and film things that I loved, but also
well, hang on then. Let's dive into that then. So because I do think we grew up in a bit of a golden era for movies, but also for character-based movies and TV shows. Too. So what was really inspiring or exciting Chris as a young person in terms of characters on screen or stage?
Okay. Gremlins dominated my brain. I remember seeing it when I was too young. It came out in the cinemas when I was born.
Yeah.
But I was only
which is mad, isn't it? Because I think of it as being a film. There's a few of those films that are like that, actually. They came out earlier than you think.
Yeah.
Because, a whole different system when we were young in terms of things passing through the cinema to VHS to terrestrial TV. But I always think of it as coming out maybe when we were a little bit older than it.
I was born the year it came out. I think it's 1983, the first one came out.
And what is it, there's obviously a lot to love about Gremlins, but what is it that really inspires and excites you?
I was completely, it terrified the living crap out of me, whilst also completely enchanting me, which I think is probably what they struggled with when they were trying to give it a rating. Gizmo was absolutely mesmerizing, and the Gremlins completely terrifying in a sort of anarchic way, which, whilst scary, was kind of funny too.
They still had character.
Yeah, they had personality. And I think what enchanted me, the same thing that enchanted me about The Labyrinth, which was the other thing in my life at the time. And then I think probably Little Shop of Horrors at this point.
Okay, don't just be dropping all these names. So let's just take a note on Labyrinth quickly, where anything seems possible, but nothing is as it seems. Does that mean that nothing's possible? Or that used to bother me as a child trying to fathom that.
I think it's really, if you question it too much, you're going to start going, there are people with their hands up, animals.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Labyrinth is for me, and I know that you are a big Labyrinth lover also, but I think Labyrinth is for me what Gremlins is for you. And for me with Labyrinth, it's the total production. It's all the best creatives from every possible example. And what a menagerie of characters that are brilliantly acted with also, which isn't always the case in character-based films. Okay, and then you mentioned, so Labyrinth, I think probably is the film that I watched the most as a child. It's still my favorite film now. And they are making a new Labyrinth film.
Apparently, yeah. Robert Eggers.
And a new Gremlins.
Apparently so. It's what everyone in the industry is frantically trying to find out who's doing it. But I'm starting to wonder if it's even being made in England. I don't think it is.
And then you mentioned Little Shop of Horrors.
So the thing that I was enchanted by, that all of those films at this point in my life really gripped me, was this sort of subtle knowledge that I knew the things on the camera weren't real. But somehow they were at the same time. Like, these things felt tangible, and I knew one way or another they existed in the world. That somewhere they were somewhere. I don't know how. I didn't know where and who and why. But these things, these characters, monsters, creatures that I absolutely were mesmerized. And loved their personalities, but their designs, something about, the Gremlins, it's just something about them charmed me so much that I have collected them until I am now this old man and a house full of Gremlins. I just found them mesmerizing. And that feeling that I know they shouldn't be real, but they feel real and they're there, really enchanted me and sort of started to lead me into that how and why and what is puppetry, what is creature effects, why does this work? And then, of course, there were the things like the Muppets around. There were lots of puppets on TV. I had a real love of string puppets as well, actually. And then Jurassic Park came along, a few years later and blew everything else out of the water again, because here were the other love of my life, dinosaurs, stomping around on a screen again, looking like they existed.
Well, we should also just, while we're talking about films we love, we haven't mentioned The Dark Crystal, which we should just drop in there for reference.
Yeah, and now the thing is, as a kid, I love The Dark Crystal in some ways, and in other ways,
it's a harder watch for a kid. I think the story and the tempo of it is
boring
different
for a kid.
Yeah, it's a challenging watch.
Yeah.
Whereas
I like it more as an adult.
Yeah, the others that we've mentioned are
joyous.
Much more gripping from a pace and narrative perspective.
A Little Shop of Horrors, I would say to this day, almost, but maybe still does in a way, beats Jurassic Park for, I think, creature puppetry. I think it's one of, that plant is the way it raps and speaks and moves is so insanely organic when things were still mostly cable controlled.
Yeah. And
the way they made that film and the way they made that plant move and have so much character and animation I don't think it's ever been bettered. I think in some ways the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were animatronic marvels and they look phenomenal, but it's an easier sell with something, a lizard that doesn't have to lip sync and move its tongue to rhythm. And the way they did it years earlier with Little Shop of Horrors is just
and I think also like with Rick Moranis and the actors in all of these films, the people performed with the puppets and animatronics brilliantly as well, which can be the difference and sometimes can be the challenge, as we often discuss with CGI, where you are looking at a tennis ball on a stick, as you like to say, rather than a creature. I think with Jurassic Park, which was groundbreaking for its uses of technology. I think the seamlessness between real creatures and
the CGI,
I think, is one of the great successes of
absolutely. And it changed everything. Yeah, everything that came after that was different. From that moment, it changed cinema permanently. I think probably in ways that like Star Wars had done with the ways they sort of filmed flying and the ships and miniatures and things. I think Jurassic Park shifted everything again. And then what we had was years of CGI, painful CGI that hasn't stood the test of time like Jurassic Park has. Jurassic Park still looks great.
Yeah. And what is it? Is it 94 or 95?
94, I think.
Okay. So, I mean, that's incredible, really.
Yeah.
And all of those films that you've mentioned, I think, do that. They do stand the test of time. But anyway, that little digression makes the point. I think it was a rich harvest of character-driven entertainment that we grew up in. Not to mention, like you say, the Muppet Show,
Jim Henson's
Fraggles,
Storyteller.
Yeah, dinosaurs. So much. So when you mentioned a puppet or making a puppet early on, what was the first puppet that you ever made for a show or for entertainment or?
Oh my word. I'd made various like some cardboardy things and some like mask sort of things when I was pretty young for like a school play.
Right, listen, scrap the question. I was looking for some kind of divine moment where a light shone down and you were like, I'm going to be a puppet maker. It wasn't that, we've established. No. All right, so what about education choices then? So you're doing Amdram, you've found a world and people now where you're feeling happier with theatre.
Yeah, my people came to me when I left school.
Yeah.
So when I went to college, went to Eastleigh College, and everything in my life changed from a personal point of view. Like I found people who had interests like I did, and I found people who just wanted to be friends and hang out. And I met my best friends, and it was such an enormous change in my life socially from what school had been. And I also think it was an opportunity for me to start somewhere. Like I went to Thorndon as the stranger grieving, and then going to Eastleigh College, I could go as an independent person. And I went there because I wanted to go there, and I'd done all the interviews and research, and I was like, I just want to go there. So everything about it was different for me. And yeah, I think it was such a nurturing environment that the more you wanted to do, the more they were happy for you to do, and just play and try things and do as many plays as you wanted and make things. And it was just a really nice time I was away from home where I wasn't particularly happy at the time, and I was able to be as creative as I wanted to be. And then in the evening, still doing my other creative ventures. And now this time I had actual friends that wanted to hang out, and we did things at weekends, and I had a little Vespa-y scooter that got me from A to B.
More common ground. I had a Piaggio Typhoon.
Oh yeah. Mine was a Piaggio. That's what it was. Yeah. A little silver thing.
T179LUJ, I think, was my little number plate, and I used to tootle around on that.
Well, yeah, because you could get them when you were like 16 if they were 50
Correct.
cc.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the only thing. So when my mum died, there's a whole trauma story about all my life being dumped. But there was a tiny life insurance payout, and I bought my little scooter with that, and it got me from A to B until my sister and I crashed. That was the end of them.
Not on the same scooter. She was
on her scooter in convoy and was possibly, sorry, I'm throwing under a bus.
God, that's what actually happened.
Well, yeah. She threw me under a car. She got distracted looking at a horse on the side of the road, and I had to brake because car in front. Mm-hmm. And she was, a pony. And everyone was fine, but the bikes were not.
Right.
Well, she was, we were both quite battered and bruised, and she had a broken arm, but nobody died. There was a moment I thought she was dead because she sort of stopped moving for a while, but, she only died inside.
Okay, great. So what about in terms of a pathway, either career-wise or academically? In college, did you start to kind of on the horizon see a light or see something that you thought might be a pathway for you career-wise?
Yeah, at that point, I fervently knew I wanted to pursue something creative. And I think it's such a... We were at a time, I think people would probably be more clued in now as to how to navigate things. And, this was kind of early internet. So the information available to us for research.
It's like really early internet.
Yeah. So it's talking about careers to people meant going to an office and talking to someone who often had an agenda in a weird way. And you'd say, well, I can make things and I'd like to perform and I like puppets and I like this. And they just go, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And you could get a job in a shop so it was useless. So really your only kind of input was either you knew someone who knew the industry. I did not.
Yeah.
You knew someone who could get you a leg up through a business who might get you in some form of industry. And I didn't really know that. I didn't have a back door in. Or you basically read like the UCAS book and looked at options and sort of went by what the public knowledge was. And that was sort of drama schools. And so I just sort of pursued that route because that was all I knew. And also I had to make a choice really between performance or like art and design. And I kind of wrestled with the fact that a lot of, especially the sort of stuff I was wanting to do, I could teach myself.
You'd identified that.
Yeah, I think I could with what I'd already experienced with the different drama clubs and the college and stuff, if you're willing to learn something and make something for people are generally willing to accept it. So you can find platforms to make and learn, and you can buy art books and play with materials and discover stuff.
Well, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice there, because now it's incredible what you can find. But I think, like you referred to back then, I do think you had to kind of go out and find it or make yourself known, or kind of.
You do, but the difference between, I sort of wrangled with, I can learn this stuff solo if I dedicate myself to it. What I can't learn solo is the performance side, because I loved theatre, but even with film, to learn acting and to learn the art of acting, but also just the art of theatre and performance as a much bigger kind of spectrum.
Yeah,
you need other people. You need input. You need spaces to rehearse. You need directors. You need to work with writers and dramaturgy. You just need all that. That's how you really discover it.
And I mentioned to you off camera that it's already becoming a reoccurring theme, balancing academia against what people have self-taught or learned themselves, either by osmosis or putting themselves in the right situation or finding the right mentors. And that does seem to be the point that's being established, is that one of the biggest pros of formal education is place, people, facilities, access to resources that really otherwise you might not ever get.
Once you're there, you make of it what you will. I think one of the traps people fall into with university is it's very different from school. School is regimented and you are given and told what to learn. University is much more about what would you like to learn and how far do you want to go with this?
Yeah. And how much can you make of the opportunity that's being presented to you, which is actually way bigger than obviously just the course that you choose. Hugely bigger. And that's what I wanted to harness. Yeah.
So that's why I resorted to kind of going, I'm going to perform, and then all of this other stuff will be there and I will just do it anyway, because I always have done. My arty side has always been my sanctity. Yeah. And so that's not going to die. But if I want to do this, I need to learn it and I need to be good.
So how did you choose, or what were the options? Where did you audition, or where did you look at?
I am a huge lover of dark, bleak comedy. And so, my 14, 15, 16-year-old up to 18 self was obsessed with the likes of The League of Gentlemen, Julia Davis, all of the kind of things like Jam, all that kind of edgy stuff.
Yeah.
And the League, especially The League of Gentlemen, and they went to Bretton Hall. So I knew that name because obsessive fan. And obviously I did all the other things like, Welsh College, Central, RADA.
What were those, like this, I love talking about this. What were those, interestingly, side note, Paul Dunphy of Larry and Paul, who we have recently interviewed, also made the Bretton decision based on League of Gentlemen. Yeah. So I think there's quite a lot of people that did. And also a lot of other famous alumni. But yeah, those audition experiences, tell me about that, where you went to, what it was like, and then perhaps by contrast, what it was like when you rocked up at Bretton Hall for the first time.
So I have a huge hatred of all these drama schools harvesting money from hopefuls and filling the places and then just relentlessly auditioning people and taking it was like 60 quid per person for the honor to walk into a room, be ignored and then dismissed. And I think it's an absolute scam, and they should all be ashamed of themselves for doing it. In
a nutshell, you mean because they interview and or audition way more people than they have an interest in, like so disproportionately above and beyond that.
Vastly. I was
which is then reflected in the conveyor belt experience that 90% of the people will have when they go and...
Yeah, and they appointed students that were there to look after the young, these young kids who have paid to be there, who have studied, they've learnt their songs, they've learnt their classic piece, their modern piece. They're nervous, they've spent their money to travel. They've probably, if they've got a part-time job or a college, they've taken the day off. They've made all of this effort, plus they've paid, plus they also have to make the grades that you need to get there. So they're already working hard to attain this. And you turn up and there are, I remember at one of the, I think it was Central, I was one of like 60 people that hour. They had just done 60 people. There was another queue of people coming in. There were like 30 places available. And they were doing 4 months of auditions. So they had this huge onslaught of people. And the only filter to get an audition there, despite what they would pretend, was that you paid 50 quid. And that was it. And even the students there, you'd go and you wait, you go and do your pieces, and people look at you and they're not particularly warm and friendly. Then they make you sit in a room waiting. And then none of the academics who teach the course, who have been sat there, can be bothered to come in and talk to you. They send a student to come in and go, sorry, we're not inviting any of you back. And as we left, one of the students, I think, seemed quite upset because I think they started to twig it's all a bit of a machine. And they said, we're really sorry. They've not actually invited anyone back for 3 weeks now.
Wow.
Because they'd filled the roles. They will take the first 20 people they think play into whatever they want to produce, whether it's, actors, freestanders, or whatever is the fashion at the time. And then they'll just go through the rigmarole of auditioning students. And it was the same across the board. And I just think it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's misleading and I think it's manipulative. However, Bretton Hall, that wasn't my experience. They didn't charge. Yes, they had a lot of people auditioning and they did it over a number of days. And there were probably close to 200 on the day I went. But they didn't hide that. And that's what I appreciated. Yes, it cost me money to get there because I lived in Southampton and that is very much in the north and I was poor. But I got there and I remember pulling into Yorkshire Sculpture Park and seeing Bretton Hall. And as you say, it was this sort of Hogwartsy kind of massive old building that had been in the Water Babies and A Touch of Frost and surrounded by lakes and sculptures and trees. And it was just like, it was magical. And I just thought, this is beautiful. And it was a bit sort of misty and all the fields looked sort of ghosty and
that was almost, it's very similar to ours. And my experience had been similar. I think other than maybe Manchester Met, I'd done big London schools and it's intense, it's stressful. It felt like you'd said kind of conveyor belts, not very kind of personal. And actually none of these schools really evoking much of an identity of themselves either through that. And then Bretton Hall was the last place that we went to. And I remember driving in with my dad, like you say, through the country park and these Henry Moores kind of piercing the fog like something out of Jurassic Park. Yeah. You approach the mansion in these fantastic raked landscapes. There were students on the lawn doing capoeira. And then as you approach the hall, this kind of group studiously marching around. And then as you went into the beautiful reception area, we were guided into the Wentworth room where we were greeted by Tim Kedge, lovely, gentle, kind soul who one of the lecturers there that welcomed everybody. And the Wentworth room has this beautiful marble fireplace that people think is the fireplace out of Women in Love, but I'm reliably informed that it's not. And we were gathered there, we were welcomed. It was hospitable, it was friendly. You could hear people performing, echoing down the corridors. And then we were sectioned off into our audition groups. And I, for the first time then met Tony Green, like a legendary character of Bretton Hall. And we went off and he led our audition process. And I remember I remember leaving it thinking, well, if I haven't got it, I've really enjoyed today and being here. But I also really, really hoped that I did get it. It was the first time I'd been somewhere where I thought, oh, I could live here.
At the end of my day there, you know, this concept of manifesting. Yeah. I was manifesting so hard, I was ready to shit myself. I wanted it so bad.
What a charming poetic vision.
I know, right? And it just, I just loved it. I wanted it so bad. It was so different from all the other bullshit audition things I'd gone to. And I really, when the letters came through and you're waiting for acceptance stuff, like that was the only thing that filled my mind.
Manifesting so hard I might shit myself is definitely going to be a clip. That's all. I can see that soundbite already. I felt the same. And then that letter came through, and what you were just describing about making the most out of the opportunity, if you've got that mindset, which not everybody has, Bretton Hall was an incredible place to be because it was a microcosm for the creative arts where you're surrounded by so many, particularly before they all started getting laid off, by so many experienced and expert tutors who either had great notes on their CV or were working in that moment and on great things.
Brilliant minds, you know, and people that they just genuinely loved what they were teaching and the world that they were in. And
there's something also like Bretton Hall itself has this rich history of fascinating people and characters and creativity and controversy in its past, which is kind of somehow woven into the landscape. And then not to mention, you are surrounded by the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which is Europe's biggest indoor-outdoor exhibition space for sculpture. So you have incredible works by Moore, Hepworth, Caro, Frink, Gormley. And
then all the students are like running around doing theatre of cruelty, stripping off and pretending to burn babies on barbecues, and big floppy willies being frivolously flopped around all over the place. And it's just amazing. And it was such a great experience, and I got to meet amazing people and learn a huge amount. And you mentioned Tim Kedge, and you know, rest his soul, like he'd sadly departed us. He was a huge influence for me there. He really saved me at points where I was struggling financially, and he took me to America to work at the camp that he ran, and that opened other doors for me and taught me a lot about myself and just having a bit more confidence in myself and my abilities to function as a human. It gave me so much. And one of the biggest things Bretton Hall gave me was a drive and a thirst to just do it. Don't wait for everyone else to do it for you. Don't hang around for an agent to call someone on your behalf. Don't wait for that perfect role to come in. Just do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, you could say that Bretton Hall produced disruptors in some way.
Absolutely.
You know, you had like the Wayne McGregors and Mark Thomases and the League of Gentlemen. Make it, you know, yes, go for your auditions and find your career, but don't all that spare time waiting for those opportunities, fill it with your stuff.
Do you know, we spoke about it a little bit on David Watson's podcast when we were guests of his. And sometimes in education and training, people can treat it a little bit like the safety briefing on an aircraft, where, you know, in the event of an emergency, the lights will illuminate and you'll be able to find it. Well, it's not fucking like that. It's going to be upside down on fire and everybody's going to be screaming and clawing you out of the way. And the industry is a little bit like that. Yeah. It isn't nice, simple, straightforward. Everybody's trying to help each other out and doing it together. You know, it's guerrilla warfare. It's a free for all. And I think Bretton was, if you wanted it, was great at providing that opportunity to learn how to do it yourself, how to get something on its feet without support, or I think it was a great place to go if you were of that mindset.
Absolutely. And now we've sold it so hard, all these students are going to be, I'm going to go there, and you can't. It's closed. You're forbidden. It's not. Doesn't exist.
Well, the building is still sat there.
It's going to be a
dormant.
hotel now. I went there recently. It was.
Well, let's see. The Groucho. It was going to be the first. It was going to be the Groucho Club's first venture out of London, wasn't it? But that was all announced a while ago, and now it's gone quiet. I think for something that they said was going to potentially open in 2026, the activity there doesn't look consistent with
They've
that.
knocked all the student accoms down.
Yeah, that was a while ago, like Grasshopper and all that stuff. Now we've now gone down a Bretton Hall rabbit hole.
Other podcast now.
So you mentioned Tim Kedge there as somebody who kind of had an impact on you and helped. At this stage in your training, career, education, anybody else that had kind of inspired you or taken that under their wing, or that you were learning from in particular?
What, during Bretton Hall?
Yeah, or in and around that time.
Well, I mean, there's Valerie Littledike singing.
Singing Val, yeah.
Singing Val. And I was part of her choir, and that was joyous. Ainsley Masterton, who in my first year was terrifying, but I just loved. And she was great, and had a lovely view of like, well, yeah, if you're new to it, you need to be told if you're rubbish, but then would like tell you how to be better. And yeah, she was great and funny. Like,
yeah, very dry.
And I think if you're a young British person in a room suddenly with sort of an authoritative Australian person who's quite dry, you can take it the wrong way. But I've always managed to find like good friendships with especially Australian women. Yeah. And I just thought Ainsley was great. Yeah. Funny and just really knowledgeable.
I agree with everything you're saying, and I also think that if you're going into this industry, like a bit of tough love is kind of helpful, because like if you can't take it, this is sort of like if you. Yeah, and actually, if you can't take being told you're not good enough, or you need to up your game, this is the wrong industry to go into.
And also, to be fair, I don't even think necessarily it was tough love. It's just instruction, and sometimes people are a bit sensitive when you're young and you think you're really good at everything. And
that's my point. It's good to get over that quickly, because you're going into a career of people telling you that it's not quite right, or what we were looking for, or
and because or they just don't even look at you in an audition.
Yeah. Now at East 15, I think Ainsley is.
I think so.
Possibly. So, all right. You enjoy your time at Bretton Hall. You diversify. You learn about other areas of theatre and craft. And what happens when you graduate? Do you have that black hole moment of, oh my God, what do I do now? Or did it segue into something straight away? Or
I was lucky. Cragrats, that were a theatre and education company, a big one that started at Bretton Hall, that the League of Gentlemen famously ripped to shreds with Legs Akimbo, Put Yourself in a Child. I got to work with them and do theatre and education. And it was, to be honest, it was fun. It was good, and it was nice to launch from student into a paid performance job. And, it was small touring, but in a real kind of hands-on kind of way. And so I was sort of lucky to sort of get going, really. And then what was nice about things like Cragrats was, if you did a good job, you could dip in and out, really, and you could go and do another show. And then if you've got a bit of a gap, you could sort of say, I'm available. And, if they're doing this show, you could run out with them again for, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, go back and do something else. And so that was nice, really. And it was a nice little sort of performance income whilst I was trying to get going with everything else. And
what was everything else in your mind at that time? Because you've
all the things, everything, all at once.
You've got some great performance credits. So even at this, like in the years after Breton, you went on to do some cool performance things. So I guess what I'm interested in is, when does this start to morph into Chris Barlow, character creature and puppet creator?
Yeah. So I guess I started working with companies and productions that did or had things like a lot of family shows or kids shows that had puppets or kind of quite a lot of prop elements. And so on tour or even in a run of a show, things break, things need to get maintained. And I was handy, so I would help. And then quite quickly people were like, oh, you're good at that. And then sort of because I was good at that, they were like, oh, can you make stuff? Yeah, I can make stuff. So I make a few things and they're like, oh, this is better than the things we had. So then I'd make more things for them. And this kind of started to spread across the various jobs I was doing. So like I was at the New Theatre Royal Portsmouth did Alice in Wonderland. And then they did Treasure Island and I was Long John Silver, but I made puppets and things for that before doing it because Caroline asked me, if I would do these things, and I made my wooden leg, and that started to become a little bit of a thing that people associated with me.
Right.
And then I started to work for companies like Illyria, where I'd sort of for a while was kind of like the resident director, and they would do 4 shows a year, and I would design those, I would build their sets, I would make all their puppets, but then I would often tour with one of their shows. So like I designed and built the Twits, and then I toured with the Twits.
And I would say that this is probably around the time where I became reminded of you or aware of you, and that kind of that you were doing that kind of work, really.
This all started. All of that started to happen and merge when I was like 24, and I was still like, I just wanted to work and make stuff. So I really enjoyed all the different opportunities, but I was also like writing comedy shows, and I had started doing bits. I'd done some bits for like Baby Cow, and then I was in talks about my own comedy series, and then that didn't quite happen. So, and I was auditioning for, I was down to the last couple of people for Groot, for Guardians of the Galaxy, and like there was all that element of performance stuff and puppetry stuff and motion capture stuff that was sort of happening. And sort of going through these long processes, and not quite getting to the finish line on some of them, but then other things would come from it. And so I was at that sort of mid-20s time when all of this stuff was I was pouring all of these different skills into it until I sort of hit a sort of breaking point, I guess. When I sort of decided I needed to start focusing, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe I wasn't getting the fulfillment from performance that I thought I would. Or maybe I'd just done enough.
Yeah.
And actually I was like, I'm sort of fulfilled by this. And I love acting, but I don't love the damage it can do to your life. So then I got a career in film. Which is even worse.
What was the? We'll talk about that in a minute, because sometimes people look at that with kind of through rose tinted glasses, or the idea of it must be
Hollywood.
You're gonna share some insight there, but when I think of your work, like I think of some of the really significant earlier pieces you did. When did the CBeebies piece come into play, and how did that happen?
That would be 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
When was Beach House Crew?
So we did the Beach House Crew. We kind of started it maybe in 17, Hurricane, and then completed it 18 into 19. Okay, probably.
So I think.
Had you done that? You'd done the CBeebies piece not long before that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So it was around. It must have been. Yeah, it must have been around the same sort of time.
So when I think of that, like we've done most of my favorite projects are things that we've done together. But when I think of that CBeebies project, I think of it being a really good project as a case study on you and what you bring to the table as a performer, a puppeteer, understanding a project holistically, and the characters that are developed for a story or as a vehicle for a story or a purpose. So tell me a little bit about that CBeebies project.
So I was working with a creature effects company called Millennium Effects at the time. I think we were working on an Old Spice advert, and my agent called me to say, hey, the BBC have asked if you would pitch for this new concept. And I was like, sure, okay, well, what do I have to do? So just put together something for this, I'll send it over. So I got this little pack, and it just sort of said, we are creating a new CBeebies show that deals with emotions and teaching kids about emotions. But at this stage, we don't know anything else. It's what we want to see are characters that could be in the show, how they should appear, animation, like digital animation, hand-drawn animation, stop motion animation, puppets, something else. And they were like, feel free to throw in ideas for the characters, names, personality traits, maybe options of them, throw in ideas for kind of show format and how it might work. Just sort of send us a creative deck. But it was quite open-ended.
Yeah.
So I did. I sort of threw together some sketches, and I kind of refined a few, and did like a young version and an older version, and then a slightly more creaturey version. And they were quite sort of fast and loose drawings and slightly different things. And then I did a load of details, and I talked about their characters and how they might interact and what their traits and what their names might be. And sent it off. And heard nothing for ages. And then next thing I know, oh, you were selected for that BBC show. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, they chose you. And like McKinnon and Saunders had gone for it. Aardman had gone for it. And I was like, sorry, what? Then there was a very weird patch of that. And it was really strange because I'd done the pack, and then somebody who wasn't working on the show, but had been given the task to liaise, had sort of said, here's some money, do some R&D. We don't know when the show's starting. We don't know anything about the show. The show's not written yet, but do some R&D. And I was like, but what do you mean? Oh, we don't know. Just do some R&D. I was like, what? Do you want prototypes? Do you want me to explore styles or colors? Yes. So I was like, okay. And the one note they came back with was, we want these to look different from anything else on CBeebies. So I was like, okay. So I then went, so again, this is true, made. I went back and forth going, do you want me to take these? Because they were very innocent kind of pencil-y drawings with a splashy bit of color. Do you want me to sort of maybe look at these on a creaturey, like animatronic-y route? And they went, oh yeah, that sounds great. So I first of all went and did some sculpts, took some photos, sent them off. Nobody replied to me. So then I took those sculpts and I digitally painted sort of furs and color schemes and how we could make them chubbier, skinnier, and just did a load of like concept-y things in the kind of creaturey realm. And nobody said anything. And this went on for about 3 months. And
you're getting paid for this work though at this stage?
No, I got one fee.
Right.
So it wasn't like a weekly payment.
Yeah.
It was like, here's $1,000, do some R&D. Again, I heard nothing. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just gonna push through. And then I had to fly off to Romania to do this other advert for Millennium Effects. And they kindly molded my sculpts for me because I needed to get this thing done. And we made these just rubber versions of these sculpts, and then I furred them and just made statues of them. And they were a bit rough and ready, but they were kit bashed to sort of go, is this what you want? And I heard nothing. And then suddenly I got a really obnoxious email from someone at the BBC, a producer who had taken on this mantle and had sort of said, oh, this isn't what we want. And we don't know if you can supply what we want. And thankfully, my agent knew the Kay Benbow, the original person who approved my designs, and sort of said, we've had months of silence, and he's gone on these 3 notes he was given by someone who hasn't even liaised with us again, and no one said anything. And now he's had this really aggressive email, and they asked me to write them a letter telling them why I should do the job. And I sort of pushed back and said, you came to me. You came to me to design it. You came to me to R&D it. And I did all those things, but you've been radio silent with me for 3 months. And I've done everything from sketches to sculpts to 3D things, and no one's given me anything. And you said you wanted something creaturey. At no point did I say, I think that's right. You said you like my designs, but you want something different. So I did my designs differently. And this was meant to be an R&D. So you could throw in and we could go, yeah, let's try this. Yeah. But nobody did that. So I don't know what more you want. And then there was some weird internal meeting. And then the 2 producers, Donna and Ewan, who were the creative producers making the show, who are amazing, were called in to a meeting and were basically told, this is not how we deal with talent. They came to London and just went, look, we're so sorry. This is all fine. Let's just work to the designs you gave, because that's what everyone liked. And here's the budget. And let's just get going and pretend none of this ever happened. Like, okay, great.
Why I love stories like this is because all people ever really know is the final product, the moment in the spotlight, the exhibition, the show, or what gets aired. And yet these stories, absurd as they are, in process, aren't unusual.
No, they happen all the time. And sometimes it's just because someone's approved something and wanted to create something, which is passed on to another producer who's currently working on something else. So they get an assistant to liaise with people, and then they have all these other projects they're working on. So it gets pushed down to then like temporary staff or people who are just basically like go-betweens. They're not in any way making decisions. They're just being told to liaise, and somehow notes aren't being sent through. They're not being passed on. Design packs reach one person. Oh yeah, I must send that to person that's not. And then they wonder where it is. And it just becomes a nightmare.
And it's also what these things can be like when they're managed by committee or too many people involved in the decision-making process. Oftentimes with many people who maybe shouldn't be in or around or involved in that process. But I think increasingly people are scared of making decisions by themselves. And so more people get involved. But aside just thinking about that as well and talking about that process, what I've loved about working with you over the years is you have developed an holistic understanding and ability from we call it scribble, sketch, and sculpt it in our terminology, but you understand and are capable of executing the end-to-end delivery of a character property. And that project, despite that horrible process that you've described, ended up being a really beautiful...
One of my favorite things I did, really. And it just because, it was dealing with emotions and helping kids develop. And like, I'm really passionate about children's entertainment. I think sometimes kids are frequently underserved. I think it's improving, but historically there's been like a lot of theatre and education companies who are deeply unscrupulous, basically putting on really bad stuff and charging a lot of money for it just because it's kids, and no one cares. No one cares what kids are watching. Just get it out there. And I think kids are often underserved. So the idea of being involved in something that really talked about emotions and emotional development, and Dr. Rada, who was the presenter, but she was also a huge creative force in what Feeling Better became, was just... It was just lovely. From a fulfilling point of view, I found that deeply fulfilling. And to then just like make some lovely puppets, and then to be part of the casting process for the puppeteers, and then just being heard on set, running that department and sort of going, don't you think maybe they, there was at one script, they were like, Ben and Bria run on with flannels on their heads because they're going to the beach. And I was like, I don't know if kids would resonate with flannels on their heads anymore. And they're like, yeah.
It's just a retro trope that somebody's...
Yeah, I mean, we're talking sort of 5-year-olds here. Like, oh yeah. I was like, maybe like inflatables, big sunglasses, sun hats, colourful bags, beach towels. Oh yeah, running to the shops, like trying to quickly get inflatables, running back, and going, throwing them on the puppets. And so like being heard and just feeling part of a very small creative team, making something that all of us really deeply cared about and felt, really it offered something for kids. And the show got caught between producers coming and going. So I don't think they really harvested all they could from it. But it's still being used in schools now for teaching. The songs are still popular on YouTube, and no matter what, it was a lovely project. We filmed it in Scotland at BBC Glasgow and just had a really lovely time.
It was a really beautiful project. And it was that project, I think, that really stuck in my mind and motivated me to really want to collaborate with you. So that then in 2015 or 16, whenever it was, I was living out in the Caribbean, overseeing a large entertainment proposition for a destination where we wanted to create some original characters to build the family entertainment around as both ambassadors of the entertainment on site in Kids Club, on stage and in shows and parades and things like that, but also for them to have resonance with the island and the region and for them to be indigenous creatures that would connect to the community and the culture a little bit. Yeah. So I developed this idea that we wanted an iguana and a pelican and some form of, I think maybe probably inspired a little bit by a group, but like a palm tree type creature. So we had Iggy the iguana, Penelope the pelican, and Martin Roots. And I was very excited about it. And then we started talking about it and then realized that actually I kind of picked 3 characters or forms that weren't the most aesthetic.
Baby pelicans are deeply uncute.
Yeah.
They are weird, gammy looking witch creatures. They are fleshy monsters.
We, long story short, because we've spoken about that project a lot and there's a lot out there about it, but we went on a journey and ended up creating 3 varying puppet forms, incarnations of these characters that were really beautiful, really effective kind of in-person, intimate interactions, cue lines, walkabouts, also on stage and from a distance and in parades. Yeah. And it was a great holistic character development project where we also looked for all of the other opportunities and applications where we could activate these characters in the guest's journey. And that for us, I think, was a formative project where we've then continued to collaborate since then on many different things, leading ultimately to us starting the business this year. But thinking about the Feeling Good project, it reminded me a little bit the subject matter of your other recent adventure with Playtime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where you've kind of been back in that similar genre. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, I believe it's still available on ITVX. Tell me a little bit. And YouTube. Tell me a little bit about what Playtime was and how you got roped into that and what your involvement was.
Well, I'd finished season 2 of another CBBC program of Pickle Storm. One of the block directors was Keen, and Keen and Andy run a production company called Nanny Caddy. Now, Keen, they worked on The Assembly, and there was the Fresh Cuts opportunity with ITV to develop an idea, and I wasn't part of the original development. So, but essentially, I understood it. There's an opportunity to have a small pot of money to kind of do a proof of concept, and I was called by Keen to just have a chat one day, very close to filming, and he sort of said, are you neurodiverse? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty dyslexic. He's like, yeah, I thought so. Thanks. Because he had just had like a late, what's the word? A diagnosis of ADHD.
Okay.
So that had opened up his world with how he perceives himself and others and just his own life, and the things that maybe be difficult for him and so on. And he and Andy had come up with this brilliant concept originally it was about talking to neurodiverse kids to get like a plot and characters for like a drama, and then they would go and do a really high budget, serious like filming of it.
Right.
But with all these crazy ideas and the ITV would be like, great, but no way. There's no way that you can afford that. But that led them to coming up to this equally brilliant idea of a school play. Get a group of people together, go and work with the neurodiverse and kids.
So that group that you mean, that is a group of neurodiverse comedians and performers.
Well, yes.
Plus you.
Yeah. So so basically he was asking me what I thought was to just supply some bits of puppets. He thought it'd be really nice if the kids could make a character and then maybe I'll perform it in the show, because the stars of the show are 6 comedians, all of whom are neurodiverse in some form. And all of whom are much more successful and more famous than I am. And so I was like, sure, I just wanted to be involved. It just sounded so lovely and so very up my street and so much more what I would like to do more of. So I was just like, I'll do anything. Just I'd love just to be a part of it. So I think it was literally like 5 days later, I was driving up to Birmingham, staying in an exquisite travel lodge, I think it was, on the side of a road, and went to this gorgeous little school. And suddenly I found myself kind of being presented like one of the main talent. I was very much prepared to be the background, and it was about the puppet, and I was going to have this box of puppet bits and I'd be giving it to Einel or someone. Einel I'd worked with on Pickle Storm, or Beck Hill could take it and they can do their thing. But no, I was suddenly sort of equal standing, apparently. And I think it's a little obvious when you watch it, because there are a few moments, especially at the beginning of the episode, where I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And I don't know what's going on. And Keen loves a little bit of chaos.
Yeah. But can we just get specific about what the brief is in terms of time frames? So you're going into the school in the morning.
Yeah.
Just map out what's going to happen on that day, like in a timeline. Because this isn't a project that you did over several days.
No, it's one day. It was one day.
So just give me a breakdown of that day.
Get to the school really early. Yeah. And then wait whilst everyone else does everything important, like set up all the cameras and all of their equipment and and meet the coordinators for the school and the people who deal with all the rights for working with children and all of the stuff that is Keen and Andy's department. And we sort of sit and wait, and then someone does a bit of makeup on us. And then basically it was, you're going to be talking to kids in various pairings and things throughout the day. And then you're all going to have 2 hours to put all these ideas together and then perform a play to the kids. We thought to the 12 kids, what they meant was the school and their parents.
But so this is, you have 2 hours to take all of the ideas.
We didn't, but this is filming on a day in the school, because there was not 2 hours. No. We had minutes, and then here we go.
you describe yourself a little bit as being kind of rabbit in the headlights in a few moments. What I recognize is your processing face. There are quite a few moments where people are downloading information onto you that you need to process and convert into some form of a character with the materials that you have. Yes. So there are a few moments where I see what I recognize as your processing face.
Yes, because I can't wipe expressions off my face. And, it's hard work. There's not a lot of memory left in there. So sometimes the face stops working, the brain's whirring, but it might be a while before I come back in the room.
Don't undersell yourself. So what did you end up with on that day then? Like it.
How do you mean?
Well,
chaos.
But it looks. I mean, it is brilliant, and the audience loved it. Yeah. The performers loved it. It feels like a vehicle and a concept that is so worthy of being repeated and developed. Like it's so. Just wonderful.
For Keen and Andy especially, I want them to have huge success with it, and for everyone else involved. Like I think, I would imagine if it was to go to like a big series or was picked up by, a big studio, I know they're talking to people in overseas as well. Like I don't know if I would be involved. Like I'm not, I
Please.
think from a celebrity point of view and a production point of view, but I would love to be involved. I would sweep school halls to be involved, but
I wouldn't imagine that's in any question.
I just think it's a really beautiful concept, and I think it could be just wonderful if they did it to schools all over the country.
It absolutely is, and what I enjoyed about it as well as a reminder, I think for anyone, but often some of the people that we work with is like remembering who we're doing it for, and what kids' perceptions and understandings and acceptance of things are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really beautiful about it. There's a couple of remind me of the bit about the broken ankle. I'm going to take you to hospital because you've broken your ankle. The catchphrase. Yeah. They should have a catchphrase, and it's just a beautiful moment where they kind of go, oh. But they'll say that to everybody, and the kid goes, "Yeah," and that is okay, because what kids have, and we talk a lot about leaning into their imagination, but they have an ability to suspend their disbelief and to accept things in a way that often adults don't. And sometimes in the creative process, when we're working with different clients or different committees, you can see things get lost a little bit, or drift. People try to rationalize or make things grown up, and we did a page and a proposal recently where we said, like, it just doesn't matter. Like it's, why does Winnie the Pooh have a top and not trousers? Yeah. Is it odd that Pluto has a dog?
I mean, it is odd that he does. It almost draws attention to the nudity.
his bare bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that was it's a really beautiful project, and fingers crossed it does become something more. It certainly
I hope so for
warrants
everyone. And especially just to get kids' voices out there.
We were talking about feeling good, and this is a good segue into message and a bottle, which is where we like to provide our guest with a bottle or a tipple of their choice, accompanied by a question or a message by somebody that knows them or knows their work. I always reach out to find out what the preferred beverage of choice is. Yours was the most extensive answer to that question that we've had from any guest so far.
I don't have a problem. I just like it every day.
It's the fact that you have a drink for every situation and every time of the day. So it was extensive, but we are furnishing you with a bottle of red wine. And this question, which is from Claire Roy Harvey. So first of all, who is Claire Roy Harvey, and how do you know her?
That evil cow.
How do you know Claire?
So Claire was a girlfriend of someone I went to Bretton Hall with, and she would turn up and join in and steal lessons. But she was also studying in Winchester, near where I lived. So we connected, and then she created with Ed the River People, and they did lots of puppetry, and I designed and made things for them for a while. And then, like me, she sort of navigated around different performances. She's also a maker. And we worked together on a number of things, both making, and then she drifted into film and movies and Star Wars and all those things like I did. And and I try and get her cast as often as I can in anything I'm working on because she is a joy.
Well, Claire's question for you, Mr. Barlow. Who is the hottest puppeteer you know? Okay, wait, we know the answer to that, she says. Her real question. Of all the many and varied projects you have worked on, she would love to know, as I'm sure many others would love to know, which is the one or one of those that has brought you the most joy as an artist?
I mean, the hottest puppeteer is obviously Claire.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Just stick a beard on her. Woof. But, I mean, Feeling Better, which we've already talked about to death, was a great joy. I really, really, really enjoyed the Beach House Crew because it had that sort of end-to-end experience, and it's nice to design, then do the final artworking, because there's elements like there's the design and then there's the making, but then there's the artworking bit that's sort of adjacent to making, where you're creating digital assets and drawn assets like maps and logos and things, and that's sort of merging the kind of making and the design elements.
We've done a few character rejuvenation projects now of legacy characters or properties, which is fun and can be an emotional journey in its own way because people have attachment to older versions or incarnations of a character. But there are unique advantages to when you are creating a property from scratch. Yeah. Because like you say, it's just a much more connected opportunity and you're not working with any legacy baggage that you've got to work around.
And you know, quite a lot of, especially when you get into sort of film and TV and big budget stuff, you more and more become a small cog in a huge machine. So your creative output it gets a bit truncated and you're sort of hemmed into one thing. But on this last Star Wars project, I was sort of thrown a character and just was given free rein, just like, we need something, build. And I just designed and made it and put it in, and everyone loved it. And that was really satisfying.
In those moments, because you've been on some really cool film sets and involved in some really cool projects. But in those moments, did you ever like have the moment to kind of step back and little Chris kind of looks and goes, whoa, I'm here? Or is it just so turbulent or traumatic that you don't?
It's sort of both at once. Like working in film is such a bizarre, it's such a weird world. It's a weird world of enormous money and people with enormous money using enormous money to do enormous things. And you can, it's not hard to be sort of thrown around within that because of just the way it's so much bigger than anything else. And it can be a bit unhealthy in that sense. Like it can dominate your life and it can, you know, suddenly it becomes 6-day weeks and you're on location, but you have to travel to location, but filming starts at 6 a.m. or your department needs to be in at 4 a.m. to be ready for a 6 a.m. filming start. But then you don't get home till 10 o'clock, but the call sheet's not out to midnight. And you just have to sort of let go of your life and just be at its whim. And that can be fun. Like there can be joy in that, but also it depends on the rest of your life and what your needs are and what your responsibilities are. And with that, you know, you go into these sets and you do really go, holy shit.
You've worked on some, we can't get into creative specifics, but in terms of logistics, like you've worked on some whoppers recently.
Yeah. So like, you know, at the moment, like it's, you do get these moments of going, this is amazing, because you don't get that experience. You don't get to go on into environments that have been built with enormous, almost unlimited money.
But in terms of scale, what are we talking about square footage? Like how big are some of these sets?
I mean, they're enormous. I mean, the one I'm on at the moment is in Cardington Hangar, which is one of the biggest sound stages in the world. And, you know, I did 6 miles the other day just walking onto set and off camera back and forth because it's that big.
Because if somebody asks you to set something, or if you're supporting a scene,
you have to reset, with every take, so
and then get out of the shot.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't be on the set because it's a wide shot. There was in The Acolyte, there was a huge woodland set. And there was actually nowhere for the crew to be because it was just so big. Everyone had to be miles from where the cameras was when they had all this fight choreography happening. So people were sort of hiding behind like the screens, all lined up in a row down one little fire exit because they could see people through the woodland. But you walk in and you've got trees that are higher than your head, rocks that, are just enormous that you can climb over. Everything's, I love the living sets, the forests and all the and it's damp and leaves are dripping and the greens run in, constantly refreshing it. And it's great. There's, in Andor, there were sort of craft hangars that we would film on that had full-size ships on, and the 30 droids buzzing around, and
what, speaking of Andor, so I bought in, obviously you were in before and after. I'm just gonna we'll zoom in on this shot here. What are you, I know you would be the first to point out sometimes you are one of many people working on characters or creatures, but what is this project? What is
that's the character I've been papped with the most because I keep looking after him for Andor. I did not make him. I don't want anyone to shout at me. I did not take the picture.
That's not unusual to have many people working on one thing.
So that's me and Luca looking after what we called Senna. I think Ian White was in him that day. He is a character that was built for Rogue One.
Yeah.
And
Andor.
And then, but that particular suit was built for Rogue One and he appears in both seasons of Andor.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely suit. It's quite heavy, but it takes a few people to look after it. It's got animatronics, and it's the fur is like hair replaced yak fur, I think. It requires a lot of people to get in and out and running back and forward and making sure the performer's okay, brushing hair, dressing, make sure it's camera ready. And that's often the case with these things,
Let me ask you something just there so I don't forget. You mentioned there from the performer's perspective, how much is your experience, or how much does your experience as a performer influence how you build characters and puppets?
Well, enormously. You can't always solve everything and every challenge, but from a performer's point of view, if it's a suit, they need to be comfortable. There needs to be airflow. It needs to move well. It needs to, be light enough. So it's trying to marry all the requirements, keeping the character, but finding ways to make this character perform beautifully, fluently, easily, whilst making something light, flexible, also resilient and tough. And always try and think as much as I can about the performer, the ergonomics of things, the strain on muscles, on hands, the reach of triggers, the angle you hold things in, where poles are. And some of it's trial and error. Some productions, some projects, you just don't get the time or the money or the process to research and develop, because everything you make is new.
Yeah.
Everything is essentially a prototype. It's rare that you get a chance to do things again. And people don't want to pay for R&D. People don't want to pay for a test one. They only want a final product. So I do my best to mitigate that. And with testing throughout, using it as a performer myself. I've brought in people to test things as well. I've got fairly big hands. I'll try and find some of the smaller hands and make sure it works ergonomically for people. I always try and use that. I've been in prosthetics and creature suits. They're heavy, they're sweaty, they're stinky. They can hurt. So I will always try my best to mitigate the demands of that.
Yeah, and I think even thinking of projects that we're working on at the moment, I think we're always very mindful of reality and the environments and context in which these characters will live and be performed, because it's not best case scenario. It's, as you like to call, sticky fingered children.
Cheeto fingered, grabbing it and wiping their hands over it and putting on its nose and all that sort of stuff. And you cannot. There isn't a one answer for all of these demands. If something needs to be super tough, it's probably not going to be light, for the simple fact that more tough materials tend to be heavier, more resilient and thicker webbing and thicker hair and denser foams. If you're going to have, if you had a lizard type creature and you're going to have kids grabbing it and touching it, you're not going to do well with foam latex. It looks great. It's light. It is not very strong. It scratches.
It's going to deteriorate quickly.
It deteriorates. The oils from the hands will corrode it. It will dry out in a few years. It becomes toast. It starts to crumble. You'll need to reskin it. It's a lot, but it's really nice and squashy and light. Yeah. So what you probably then start to go, well, then is it silicone? And silicone is flexible and great and feels great, but it can be very cold, but it's also very dense and incredibly heavy. So what do you do then? So you start going, well, can we make it a really thin skin, but then does it stretch properly? And you fix one problem. It's like sort of plumbing. You go, fixed it. Tss. And you're like, right, okay. Tss. And you sort of chase your tail with keep it light, keep it strong, keep it light, keep it strong, keep it flexible, keep it strong. So sometimes you've just got to sort of say, well, it is going to be heavier than it would have been if it was this.
But
that is the way it is. Because
you mentioned it before, but that's why the R&D phase is so important, and it's so often neglected, or people don't. Not all. I would say that we have, and we know there are some clients and people who are really interested in that and appreciate that.
We're doing prototypes right now for a client, which is great, because then we get to iron out that process for when we do multiples of it. So that's good.
It feels like right now a little bit of a purple patch for characters and for puppetry. There's certainly some really kind of prominent examples, in entertainment.
In live entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why, obviously you're an advocate, but why do you think puppets and live characters just dropping a little segue there. Why do you think puppets and live characters are a great vehicle for storytelling as opposed to people? Or what would you say are the advantages of using puppets or characters in live entertainment?
Well, I think it's a heightening of imagination. It's a way of pulling the fantasy and make-believe into a visual realm, into a tangible visual realm. Sure, you could do a play about a polar bear and it could be a tall man with a hat with ears on. Sure, you could do that. That's fine. And in many ways, it could be very successful. But if you put the effort in and you bring a polar bear onto the stage, even if it's stylized, if it's puppet, and it's a beautiful puppet and it moves beautifully, you're just creating a realm of imagination coming to life. And I just think that's engaging and exciting for any audience. But I don't think it's just for kids. Look at what's happened in Paddington. Paddington could have been someone with ears on a hat.
Yeah.
Easily. It could have been hand puppets done in a sort of different sort of way. It could have been a bit Avenue Q'd. There's lots of different ways it could have been. They went for, little person performers and Artie Shah with an animatronic head and a beautiful creature suit. And it's wonderful. And you've got an offstage puppeteer. So it's two performers coming together with a huge creative crew behind it. And, they can now make them walk down London High Street and everyone's just gone, yeah, amazing, brilliant.
One of the things that I love and I think I've performed in characters, next to characters, worked with a lot of character-based entertainment is I think there is something that is less relative, but sometimes even more relatable about characters. We often, we're happy to do all work as long as it's of high integrity. But we're not massive fans
low
of
integrity.
We're not massive fans of human character forms.
I think, yeah,
there's something, I think, when you use a character form that kids or young audiences don't physically relate to, that gives you a lot more opportunity and safety and emotional connection sometimes.
I think you can, as soon as you have a human, you're tied to certain realities. You're tied to a race, and you're tied to age. You're tied to gravity and certain elements of human anatomy and physicality and all those sorts of things. You're tied to maybe some gender identity. And I think if you're making a film and it's about that, that's not a problem at all. But I think if you're designing like mascot characters that you want to have more of a universal appeal within iconography, within pictures on a wall, and within a character meet and greet, I think sometimes you can sort of, if you're pursuing a human route, you can limit yourself a bit, or you end up creating something that maybe only 5% of kids identify with.
Yeah. And I tell you something I am grateful for is I do feel like there is an increase or a shift in people moving away from big 8-foot mascots,
I hope so.
kind of whatever polyfiber heads with a bad costume shop body, and now starting to we're doing a cool walkabout concept for a different sci-fi IP, but people are starting to understand the impact of a more intimate interaction with a character that can be smaller, that can be brought down to eye level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole number of benefits to it. One is your character that you've established, whether it's TV show, whether it's your mascot to begin with, can appear in its most honest form in terms of its proportions, because you're not taking that character and forcing it onto a 6'2" man. If it's a puppet and it's external of someone, you can make it the right scale. Yeah. Or you can make its proportions of the right scale. Maybe if it is a 6'5" man, but it had tiny arms, but and you sort of go, well, how do we make that work? Do the necks work where the eye lines are? It starts to become a bit fudged. Yeah. And even the incredibly expensive, some of the incredibly expensive Disney suits over the years have suffered this. Woody from Toy Story was one of the
odd neck.
Very odd neck, because they still have to make it work for a human form. So that's one benefit. Your character can look accurate. Yeah. The next thing is they don't have to be overbearing for kids.
Well, I think the dynamic, I think, is where it's most interesting. And I will caveat this again by saying we are huge advocates of leaning into kids and young audiences' ability to suspend their disbelief and in general. But the dynamic of creating a character that is smaller than your audience is so powerful. Yeah. And we have a live project at the moment. Who knows how it will evolve or develop. But one of the characters is smaller than most of the target audience. And it is such an exciting dynamic to play with. And the thought of kids being able to look down on a character.
And feel like the protective entity of that character.
That dynamic.
If you think about kids and look at little kids that have baby dolls and they carry it around and reenact that care role. If your mascot is 8 foot tall, that kid doesn't naturally gravitate to being there, I'll look after you. So having something that they can feel bigger than, I think, is a really interesting place to explore. Having characters that they feel eye line with and feel on par with, I think, is an interesting place to explore. And having bigger characters is great too. But there is an impact there, and something enormous always feels overpowering. It does to me. Like as an adult, if I walk up and there's a huge mascot in front of me, it can feel a little overwhelming. And I think that's, sometimes we overlook that element of, it's fine if we shove a person in a suit, and but the character's meant to be a little seahorse, and now it's 10 foot tall, and it looks great from a distance, or on the bow of a ship waving to people on the shore side. But do your kids really want it running at them to say hi? Sometimes yes. I just don't think it's always the answer. And I think when you look at the big players in the entertainment industry, the Universal Studios, the Disney parks, they really are nailing this amazing character interaction. Look at the Olaf Disney have just produced with the that walks around. But it's like he jumped out the film.
But there's two things there. I think what everybody is understanding now is that you are creating for in situ impact and experience, and online impact and experience. And certainly those intimate character interactions, How to Train Your Dragon, the Olaf, will create masses of viral content beyond which you would get from a stage production with characters. Like it's, other than, again, maybe the How to Train Your Dragon, footage that's constantly, those intimate interactions, I think have developed an exponential impact that people have become more aware of. Thinking about us and recent events, after collaborating on different projects over the past kind of 10 years, we decided early this year at the turn of the year that rather than working with or for other agencies where we perhaps were silent creatives or contributors to projects, we wanted to remove the filter, remove the layered margins, and establish a character development studio where we would develop characters for all platforms and mediums as our speciality. And after a period of creative development, we launched Fuzzy Lightbulb. It's been great so far. We knew some of the people that we wanted to work with. They knew us. We've also been and knocked on new doors, which excitingly are opening. I wondered with Fuzzy Lightbulb and with the lay of the landscape right now for entertainment, what are you really excited about that we're perhaps working on at the moment or on the horizon that you would like to do more of?
I'm really excited. I mean, 3 of our projects that there's the theatre one, the musical one that I want to happen so badly. I'm going to manifest until I shit myself about that one.
Yeah. Okay.
The theme park one, which sounding hopeful, I'm really excited. That would be from a build point of view, that would be a really lovely build. That would just be a beautiful thing to do and implement, and could be really fun, but also interesting. I just think it would be a really interesting project. I'm genuinely looking forward to creating more in-depth character propositions. The one that we've just done, which we're still working on, and it's still all in talks. It's really satisfying. I'm really excited about where we can take that elsewhere, but also taking that process and the scope we built with that, with another set of characters and some other ideas we've sort of had sort of scope on, chats about taking those ideas forward a bit more, creating design packs and character packs, and seeing where they lead. I find exciting.
Hearing you talk about that, I think one thing that we have done over the years is we've established an understanding of the entire character proposition and opportunity that people have, that oftentimes can be quite a disconnected, compartmentalized process. And it's a shame because everybody is working essentially with the same stimulus or concept, but in silo, and it becomes detached and broken up. And I think we have learnt over the years how to keep that together and to create kind of connected.
There's so much you can do with a character. Even the simplest of puppets, if handled right, can bring a lot of joy and attention and interactivity to any space, really. And so often these projects get stuck alongside something. We're having our hotel renovated, so let's have a character. And sort of everyone's like, okay, well, all the money's going to the hotel. Here's a little pot, do a side character. And then they just get a cheap suit, and then an embarrassed person off the tills get in it, and they wave and hand out flyers. And it's all a bit, and there's just so much more opportunity there. And I think when clients can really see what they can leverage from something and how much joy a character can bring, but also like how much free advertising, if you have a genuinely beautiful puppet that's actually exciting to look at and engaging, you take that on a tube and you will have thousands of people videoing it and putting it on their streaming services or online in various forms. You hold meet and greet events. When we did Alice in Wonderland, they took the Cheshire Cat to Hamleys and had a huge event. It just creates a stir. If it's really rubbish, people they'll just walk past it. They'll walk past an embarrassing mascot, like, don't look at me, go away. But if you're bringing something that is really beautiful and tangible and has a performative element, people just want to see it. It's like street performers. When you get a person doing something really cool, people just flock. Try and get through Covent Garden when someone's doing something cool on a tightrope.
Yeah.
Embrace that.
I think, and I hope that's what we're doing as a business. We're helping people understand the fullest opportunity with a character property, how that character can jump off the page, how audiences can enter the world of the character, how they can experience things through the eyes of the character, and all the different iterations of that character that can manifest throughout the guest or entertainment journey. And I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time to be doing the kind of work that we are doing because of the opportunities that technology presents, also because of this upswing in live experience and immersive moments that people want. And I do think that characters and live puppets and creatures are and can be at the heart of that.
Absolutely. And I think we're on this precipice now where cinema and streaming is all the sort of weird miasma of slightly messy realms of where it's going. But what is clearly becoming a requirement, an expectation, a desire of audiences are these more immersive, surrounding experiences, sensory experiences that offer much more than a traditional play or a traditional film experience. There's the likes of Secret Cinema. There's things like the Hunger Games where they built the auditorium for it and it all moves. Then you've just got like beautiful puppetry in things like Totoro. You've got animatronics appearing in Paddington. You've got The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You've got Punch Drunk doing an immersive computer game experience, but as well as their enormous immersive shows.
I mean, even just some of the West End stuff recently in terms of like Stranger Things and
Evita. She did the song outside the theatre.
She did the song outside the theatre.
Like, sod you and your tickets.
It's an era of audience agency as well, isn't it? Like I'm passionate in the work that we do, that any entertainment we offer should be better than what you can do at home or experience at home. And that is getting more challenging because the technology and the gamification of things people can do at home is becoming more advanced. Mm-hmm. But I think giving audience agency, like you've referred to, these immersive experiences, is becoming more and more prevalent. And again, characters are an incredible way of doing that.
Look at the Jurassic World experience.
Look, we're not talking about dinosaurs again. We are dawdling towards the end of this interview, and there's so much more that we could talk about. And who knows, we'll come back and maybe do more of these. And I certainly think with the journey with Fuzzy Lightbulb, it would be great to offer people an insight to our process, to some of your incredible work.
Let's do like a studio thing where it's actually about making and stuff.
But now some of the standard questions that we throw at all of our guests. How do you escape? What do you, we like to, when we come to your senses, what are some of the sensory recommendations that you enjoy or help you escape or switch off?
You mean once I've got the bars off?
Uh-huh.
I like cooking. I like gardening. I like plants because they don't argue. I like walks in the park. I almost said fried chicken, pig dicks. Walks along the beach. I like festivals, and I like to make use of time.
Yeah.
So I try and set time aside to do things creatively that are just for me and because I want to do them.
Well, we did speak about this. I observe in you, perhaps more than you observe in yourself, that you do utilize a lot of your superpowers in your everyday life and home. You're very creative, crafty, and buildy around your house and garden.
Yes, and yes, yeah. I mean, yes. My house is slightly crazy. And, it's not that I like to suddenly do a knee-jerk reaction, decide to just do it, pull all the shelvings out and redecorate and move it again. But that is also something that maybe happens often. But, I don't think about it at the time. And then people are like, wow, this was a choice.
But I love that about you. And I love that you're also very good at going and learning something and then applying it. If you didn't do what you do and we weren't doing what we're doing, what would you go and do? What would be another career that you think you could have pursued or a life you could have led?
OnlyFans.
Excellent. Well, who knows if this time next year, if everything's gone,
it's always a backup, right? There's something for everyone.
What advice would you give to yourself now?
Like right now?
Yeah. In life, not,
What would I say? What advice would I give myself now?
Because let me give that a bigger build up. We've gotten to know each other even better through starting a business together and now working together. And I know you to be somebody who has a lot of experience and expertise, but has also, carries some wounds from the industry a little bit as well. And there are now certain things that we will say no to, or situations we won't get into because of experiences and learnings we have, from the past. And I see that in you, that you've gotten to know yourself and the industry quite well. Yeah. So I wonder.
I think what I struggle with currently is trying not the pessimistic wounds of the difficulty that can be forging careers in the creative industries color everything.
Yeah.
And perhaps like accepting that maybe I need a break sometimes. And it's tricky. I mean, this last year's been it's been a lot of work because we're setting up a new venture on top of the existing ventures, on top of the other work, and it can just be a lot, and you can get kind of burnout. But not trying to find ways to keep that joy and spark in creating things, and not get bogged down with the nonsense that is work, actually, and being at the beck and call of clients, and just sometimes remembering that it isn't always difficult.
Yeah.
And sometimes those moments of difficulty can lead to moments of brilliance and joy. It can just feel very difficult sometimes, and it feel like you're wading up a hill of treacle, just trying to get paid. Just trying to get a project going that you've been asked to do, and they've given the deadline, and they are relentlessly the ones holding it up. And trying to do good work in that environment is hard. And those things can wear at you, and they can become sort of like a weight around your creative heart that starts to color how you feel about everything you're doing. And so try to be, I would tell myself, be more active in doing things you're loving for yourself, because that will keep that creative light alive.
And with that, like, I talk to you often about kind of turning 40 and looking at life and thinking about a few things a little bit differently from a professional perspective. And for me, one of the biggest things has been saying no to things, less trying to help everybody and do everything for everybody, and saying no to more, and actually then realizing that the no's make room for the yeses, and the more rested you are, the better the work that you do is. And actually with Fuzzy Lightbulb, because we know some of the people we want to work with, we know some of the work we want to do, we have already said no to quite a few things because it just didn't feel right, or it's not something we want to.
Yeah, we just didn't engage with it. It wasn't right for us or at that time.
So that for me, in being a partner with you in this venture, I'm really enjoying it. It's empowering me a little bit to be like, oh, hang on, why have we set this up? We're established. People know us.
I say no a lot.
but I'm really glad of that, because the work that we are doing is of such a high caliber, and we are so proud of it. And I don't ever want that to change.
It's also that weird trap, I think, that everyone, you know, as you say, we're middle-aged now and we are experienced. And between us, we have a lot of experience. So we shouldn't feel the need to fall into the trap of saying yes to anything because it's there, because we're trying something new. Because we've done that. I've done that. I've done a life of saying yes to things that didn't pay, and people who wanted friends rates who then screwed me over. And I've done all that. I've cut my teeth on that. I don't need to do that again. What I need to do now is take the best of what I can do and now throw that into the world as my starting point.
Yeah.
And so that everything that comes along now is, for me, exceptional. I want to be exceptional. I don't want to be doing dregs or working my ass off for nothing in difficult situations, because I won't be exceptional. So that's what I want, is to take the best of what I can do as now the foundation.
And do you know what I would say as advice to throw out there as well is that if something feels challenging in the outset, and this is also something that working with you, I think are becoming increasingly good at. If something feels challenging in the first instance, it's not going to get better.
Probably.
That's your red flag to walk away from.
Yeah. Or to manage.
Yeah.
Because
if you can.
Yeah. And some of that is about being confident and also clear with your client about the expectations on them as well. Yeah. As a supplier, it's not all about them.
Yeah.
Because what they want from you, they want to be good. So it's up to you to tell them how that can be good.
Yeah.
By saying, right, to make this happen, I need you to sign off this here. I need this money here. We need to sign off on these materials here. You tell them those points, and you make sure as a business you meet those targets, because then if they don't, it's not on you anymore.
Yeah.
You've given them the tools. If you're wishy-washy with that, then that's where problems happen.
You're opening yourself up to vulnerabilities.
So some of it is, you can manage chaos a bit. If they're chaotic, but you like them, and it's all, you can manage it. And also you've set your boundaries as a business, but also as a creative. These are my boundaries. I need you as the fellow creative, my client, to have your say, but I need it at this time so I can take your say and implement it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do that, I can't make the best of this. And eventually I will have to walk away because I don't have infinite time and resources for your nonsense.
Yeah.
But I've done my best. And here's the structure.
And I do think developing that confidence comes with time and with experience. But I would emphasize your point of your systems. You're only as good as your routines and your systems. That is what you'll fall back on. And the client relationship and the collaborative relationship is as important as the work itself. Because actually the work often won't happen if you're not monitoring and maintaining that relationship. Penultimate question. I give everybody the opportunity to ask me a question, as if we don't speak to each other enough. But any questions you'd like to ask me in this moment, Chris Barlow?
what's the thing that's exciting you the most for the coming year?
Well, like you said, there's a lot more that goes into setting up a business than you think, or I think you remember, particularly when it's a business that multiple people are involved in, because actually for us, it's a new relationship or a new dynamic to build as well. And 2025 has been a lot of setting up, building up and launching. And I am now so excited with what we've created in Fuzzy Lightbulb and the opportunities that we've had and are receiving. I think we're going to create some really meaningful characters and work for people. We're already involved in some cool projects, and I think there's going to be more of those. And that's what I'm really excited about. I think is meaningful work that leads people to appreciate what you can do with characters in the live environment even more. And it does feel like a good time. It feels like there's a little bit of a purple patch for characters and for puppets in live entertainment. So hopefully we're doing what we're doing at a good time. And I think, we know the industries that we want to work in, theater, live experiences, maybe a bit of theme parks, TV, film, as and when it's, relevant. But I'm really interested and I'm really excited, and I'm really looking forward to us continuing to work together. Many of my favorite projects to date are things that I've done with you. And I think we're just going to keep adding to that portfolio. And we talk a lot about anybody who wants to go into the creative industries. I think something that is really, really important is that you are at one with the process and the day-to-day of what the work is, because it's not about the exhibition, the curtain call, the review, what gets aired. It is about the day-to-day work, that process, and who you do it with. And I'm really enjoying that. So that was a brand standard waffly answer, but final question. Who should I interview next? Who do you know or could think of that you think would be a good person to share their experience with our audience?
Well, I'd love to batter back to Claire Roy Harvey.
Great.
As a puppeteer, for sure. Claire would be a good, especially a female perspective of puppetry in film, where it's been a bit of a sausage fest.
Right, okay.
Traditionally. But someone else, I would also suggest someone like Kate Walsh at Millennium Effects. She's one of the directors there. And I think like a perspective on kind of projects, filmmaking, handling projects in the kind of prosthetics and animatronics and creature effects realm, and kind of managing big end clients, because being that sort of director role, she really directly goes between the makers and fabricators to the producers, directors, and on-set management of all of that, and the kind of colliding of those worlds and trying to manage those kind of budgets. And that she would be deeply interesting to talk to from that point of view as well.
Great. Two very, very solid recommendations. And I think a great interview that was interesting and insightful, as I knew it would be. There's so much to cover with you, and I think we'll definitely come back and do another version of this, maybe a bit
uncovered
in the future, where we can talk more about some of the projects that we're working on at the moment as they come to fruition. When we're allowed to. But for now, we've been getting notes from Chris Barlow. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Branding.
Thank you. Thank you.